But Jen, you brought some interesting new stuff that you apparently want to comment on.
Yeah,
and please do so.
I pulled up this because the big event here in the U.S. for those of you international viewers. You may or may not be aware we have an election coming up in a couple of days now.
2 days to go, and thank goodness it's almost all over.
It turns out that there are groups of Americans praying for Election Day miracles. Now, I guess.
Really hard.
What kind of Election Day miracle you're praying for depends on which side of the political spectrum you happen to fall on. But it runs the gamut here. There's prayer circles for Obama. There's people who are praying for John McCain to pull one out and win this one. So I guess
innuendo, zing.
Yeah. I guess there's just no way to fail. God can't fail on this. Because then there's the one.
Well, not according to James Dobson. I mean, you read his little ranty bit about how if the liberals, right, that ultimate curse word,
the liberals
win this election, then it's over. I mean, it's all just it's just that's the end of everything, and so that is reason alone, I think, to vote for good old Barack, just to read the screaming insanity that on their websites on the morning of the 5th about just woe and despair and just the entertainment value on the Christian right-wing web the following morning will justify all of it. So
I may have to go to Donald Wildman's website.
Donald Wildman's, I'm sorry, that was Wildman I was thinking of.
Wildman?
But Dobson has said similar stuff.
Okay, I was going to say, that it sounds like it was worthy of a Wildman comment there. Yeah. Well, what I like is this particular individual who, she and her husband are co-pastors at the International House of Prayer in Tallahassee.
And waffles.
In Tallahassee, Florida. And
do they have a special prayer syrup? Or
that'd be good.
Yeah.
But they're organizing a marathon of prayer, fasting, and Bible reading. Okay. But they say the outcome is up to God. So, no, the outcome is up to the voters. So, I would say something off color here, but in the interest of keeping
and if the outcome is up to God, then why bother voting anyway? Because God's omniscient, and He already knows He sees 2 days in the future already, and knows who's won.
Yeah.
So it's all entirely pointless.
So it's a done deal.
Yeah.
So all y'all that are praying for a miracle, y'all can stay home. The rest of you go out and vote.
Well, again, isn't praying for anything pointless? Because if God is omniscient and knows the future with complete clarity, then praying for anything is pointless. Well, because He's already made His mind up of what He's going to do at all times.
Well, not only that, but I think it's a little bit arrogant because it assumes that this person that's saying the prayer has some special end with God that that God's going to grant that prayer over all of the others out there. Like the kids praying that they're going to get fed today, or have clean water, or not die from malaria. So
Yeah, this is the same God who, whenever you bring up the problem of evil, they say, "Oh, well, God can't interfere with free will. God can't interfere in your lives because that would negate free will, and free will is this incredibly precious, important thing."
Yes.
So the reason God doesn't stop violent rapists from attacking 10-year-olds is because that he can't interfere with free will. Free will's too important. But when I want something really bad and I want to pray for it, then I want Him to interfere. So it's having that cake and eating it too is how they really want it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and this is kind of an interesting thing for me because I was having a conversation with my mother this past week. Who my mother came to visit me. My mother recently found out that the breast cancer that she thought she beat 6 years ago is back, and it's in her bones, and so she actually is stage 4 now, which is, of course, not curable, but it's very treatable. And for those who don't know, stage 4 breast cancer, it could end up, you could survive 2 years, you could survive 5 years, you could survive 20 years, you could die of something else entirely. So, the important thing is they caught it extremely early.
So, okay, that is good.
And she is getting excellent care.
That's excellent. It says, Matt was saying a few weeks ago when he, found out that he was sick. He said, we are living in the best time in human history to be sick.
Yes.
Because advancements in science and, and medical research have even horrible diseases that would, knock you flat dead
Yes.
Even a few years ago, are more and more, as the years go by, treatable. You might not be able to cure things, but you can at least manage certain diseases in such a way to where, they only reach a certain point, and of course, while you have to live with it, at least you can still live.
Right.
And you can potentially go on and have a very happy, productive life for a decade or more. Even with a cancer that in 1980 or 1970 would have been a very quick death sentence.
Yes.
So.
And so she runs into people from time to time who discover that she has stage 4 breast cancer, and of course one of the common responses is, "Oh, I'll pray for you," and she's gotten to where she's very offended by this, particularly people that she doesn't know at all, that say that, they're going to intercede with God on her behalf, as if they have some special, ability to get God to grant their wishes when it wouldn't,
Or as if God just wasn't aware.
Yeah, like he just didn't know. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for giving me the heads up there. Being omniscient, I didn't know that.
I'll bump that up on my priority list.
Sure, right.
Like, okay.
That's the curious thing about the praying thing. I actually overheard something very similar one morning. I was having breakfast at Kirby Lane, and over in the next table was a guy. There's 2 men having breakfast, and one of them was just offering to pray for his pal, just for very and he was talking about it like they were like these 2 white-collared dudes, and the one guy was offering to like put in a good word for the boss.
Yeah.
And this was all very straight face. It's like, so you got anybody else you want me to pray for? Because I'm as if this was like hey, I can it's sort of like a rodeo. Hey, I can get you backstage if you want that kind of thing. Like he's got some pull, right?
Yeah.
And they really believe this. And I think it's interesting psychologically to think about what is going on there. It's prayer is, I think, often accurately mocked as this way to just convince yourself that you're doing something about something without actually having to do something. Yeah. And with no effort, you can just put it all in the hands of the Lord. And Christianity, sort of the churches and the sermons and the places they go to receive the word, this encourages this attitude of just put your problems in God's hands and it'll all be okay.
And I think that a lot of that attitude has to do with the discomfort a believer feels when they're confronted with a situation where they're truly powerless. In the case of someone has cancer, and there's nothing that individual can do to actually help. And so in order to deal with their own discomfort, they throw out this, "Well, I'll pray for you." So I think that it's, in some cases, at least as much about alleviating their own discomfort as it is about, expressing some sort of goodwill. Because frankly, if you say this to someone you don't even know, how meaningful could it possibly be?
Right. It's not necessarily I could just meet someone for the very first time and they could tell me they have cancer, and I could give them a genuine expression of sympathy, like, I'm really sorry to hear that, I hope the best for you.
Sure.
And I mean that to a certain degree. Now, I'll pray for you may be their way of kind of saying that.
Yeah.
Because it gives them that sense of dealing with the discomfort. But it's just a way that they know to express sympathy.
Yes.
And so... And some people say, well, what's wrong with that? There's nothing really malevolent about that. Well, I think, in the general sense of, is it better to hold rational, all things being equal, is it better to hold rational beliefs or irrational beliefs?
Yeah.
And is it better to, if you really want to support and help somebody, to give them the kind of real help and real support that will do them good, instead of simply giving them platitudes of I'm sorry, I'll talk to my divine friend about your situation, and that will make me feel better.
And the acid test is, and I don't doubt that there are some people that like you're saying, it's truly their expression of goodwill. My thing is, I would rather someone just say, "Hey, I'm sorry, that really sucks," because it does. But I think that the acid test here is, if you would not be offended if someone said, "Oh, well, I'll sacrifice a goat for you," then saying, "Hey, I'll pray for you," would be appropriate in the same situation. If that either is not meaningful to you or is in some sense offensive to you that someone would sacrifice a goat, then perhaps if you feel the need to pray, then do so. But probably not necessary to walk up to people you barely know. Yeah. And claim that you're going to intercede with a deity on their behalf.
Yeah. I mean, if it's just an expression of sympathy, fine. Okay. As atheists, we think it's kind of silly, but we're not going to, so some person who has, a genuinely sincere sort of feeling of sympathy and expresses it that way, well, we're not going to be rude and go, well, screw you, but we're going to say, probably just brush it off, say thank you very much, or what have you, and just kind of, if that's the kind of thing, that's, you can let that kind of roll off your back, and you understand, all right, what this person is really saying is, I'm sorry to hear that, hope the best, and the reason they say it that way is because they've learned that the way you express these emotions or these feelings of upset or discomfort is to filter them through your religious belief.
Yeah.
And that is, a function that religion serves, I think, for the believer, is that it helps you manage insecurities about life, and about things that go on that happen that you don't expect, and it's really upsetting. Now, is it an effective way to manage those insecurities? Maybe, just from a standpoint of your own basic psychology, probably, but in terms of actually doing the tangible, real things, fine. It's like the old, the Islamic saying says, trust in Allah but tie up your camel. Ultimately, if you want something done, you got to do it. And if you think that praying, if the act of prayer makes you feel better, but that's really all it is, and just understand that that's all it is. It's not something that's going to accomplish anything.
Right.
It's like, well, I'm sorry your mother has this condition. I'll pray for her, but here's the number of a really great oncologist.
Yeah.
There you go. Now you're doing something really meaningful. And,
Well, and the irony of it is that the same people that will say, "Oh, I'll pray for you," they won't recommend a really good oncologist, even if they know one, because some of these folks feel that in some way that's presumptuous. Mm-hmm. To assume that she wouldn't know a really good oncologist already. So.
Well, that might be, but it's still it's a cut above in terms of actual effectiveness of doing things.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, I'd rather filter lists of oncologists than it's like, oh, you're on my prayer list. Yeah. Oh, gee, thanks.
And, and here are the goat entrails I sacrificed for you.
Yes.
Take good care of these.
Yes.
So what else? We're letting the calls sort of rack up. Thanks for calling in. Numbers right there on the lines. Area code 512-477-2288. That's what we're doing. We're just here. We're talking today. We're talking to you and talking to each other. And sometimes Muhammad will pitch in, some words of wisdom, or at least moos and grunts and lowing noises as cows do. But what else? Anything else of interest?
Well, I pulled up this thing. It's a Somali rape victim, age 13, who was stoned to death after being accused by Islamic militants of adultery. Okay, now there are so many problems on so many levels with this story. Not the least of which is 13 years old, adultery, meaning she must have been married at 13. There's a little problem there. I doubt that was really her choice.
You think?
But they did it in a stadium with 1,000 spectators. They stoned her to death for. She said that 3 men had raped her.
Let's think about this for a minute. Now try to visualize it. A stadium with 1,000 spectators gathers in the year 2008.
Yes.
In the 21st century, people are gathering at a stadium to watch a child get murdered, and this is a good thing. This in their culture.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, case closed. This is a barbaric religion that should not exist. Case closed.
Yeah. This is what this is what a theocracy gets you.
Yeah. I know. And all of the Christian fundamentalists who say, oh, well, the only reason you go after us is because we're not dangerous, horrible bomb throwers like the Muslims are, and you're scared of them, so that's why you don't attack them. I'll say right now on the TV, screw Islam. It needs to disappear. Mm-hmm. Okay? There's no place for it in the 21st century. All right? That's it. Done deal. If your religion, I don't care what it is, it just happens to be this one, validates and supports the act of, let's gather together at a stadium. Let's fill a stadium full of people to watch a child get murdered. All right? You are subhuman. Okay? Period. You don't deserve to even be part of this species. I don't care. Okay? Because there is no way to validate that morally. Okay?
Yeah.
End of story. That's the end of the story on that.
Well, I guess the initial news reports said that she was 23, and later her father said, no, she's only 13. Mm-hmm. But even if she had been 23, that would not in any way mitigate the horror of stoning someone to death for allegedly committing adultery. Even if she were 23, even if she committed adultery, she doesn't deserve to be stoned to death. She deserves to have her husband divorce her. And that's it. Yeah. Okay.
I don't care if this person was a grown man and a mass murderer who went on a rampage with a Kalashnikov in a shopping mall. You don't gathering people together for this blood sport in a stadium to stone them. That's not how you handle these things. You have courts and due process. That's just kind of how it works if you're a human being. I would think someone with at least if you are sinking to the if you're sinking to the level of the people that you're accusing of crimes and punishing for crimes. If your way of handling that criminal act is to stoop lower than they did.
Yeah.
Okay. This girl is essentially accused of a sex act. So what do? We get 1,000 barbarians together in a stadium to watch this child get murdered, have her head, her body crushed by stones.
Yes.
Okay. Whatever, I'm sorry. Whether she was raped or had, or had sex willingly or anything, whatever she did. Okay, there's not even a number. Okay, I mean the digits don't go high enough to express the difference in degree between her act that she's accused of and their way of handling it.
Exactly.
There is simply no justification.
And just
it's subhuman and barbaric.
For those people who say that we give Islam a pass on stuff, let me point out the fact that according to this article, Somalia is one of the world's most violent and impoverished countries, and a quarter of the Somali children born will die before the age of 5. So, and I would also point out that most of the people in Somalia are Muslims. So, if your God is real, I think Allah's given you guys the finger. Yeah. So you might want to rethink your position on that.
And I'll also add, that I've lived in Dubai and I've traveled in the Middle East, and I have met more, of the nice Muslims than I could have, and they are truly wonderful folks. Okay, I mean, they're probably not the barbarians. They're not the guys who go to the stadiums to watch, mass murder or any sort of act of violence. But the belief itself, if you're able to do this, if you are able to do this act and justify it by your beliefs, then you are a subhuman with a barbaric belief system. And so and I tell you, when I was a small child, and so this would have been like 30, 35 years ago, and I lived in Dubai before it became the Vegas of the Persian Gulf. It was just this little 2-camel town, and my dad was in oil. So and they were awesome people. I went to we went to a Bedouin wedding. It was the Sheikh's son was getting married. And it literally looked like, that shot in Lawrence of Arabia with the tents going on forever. I mean, that's how it looked. And we had a fantastic time. And so, so please don't call up and say, well, what about all the nice? I know those people. I've known them personally, okay? Many nice Muslims out there are nice people in any other religion. But you've got this going on, okay? And if you're the kind of person who's partaking in this, you're subhuman and barbaric. And the belief system is unforgivable. And a nice person can subscribe to an unforgivable barbaric belief system. There are things about the Christian faith that I find extremely barbaric, and believers quite often will turn a blind eye to the things, and they'll practice. Well, here's the bit of Christianity that I think is nice, or the bit of Islam that I think is nice, or whatever you profess. And the bad stuff, you'll either say, well, that doesn't really pertain to my life, or it's been misinterpreted, or it doesn't really say that, or the most common one, the people doing that aren't true X.
Yeah, the true Scotsman fallacy.
You're not a real Christian, you're not a real Muslim, you're not a real person, you're someone who's perverted and distorted. In that case, where are the folks of the faith standing up to against the people of the faith who are doing the bad things?
And of course, in Somalia, you don't do that because you get killed, because there's actually no functioning government there either.
Because the bad guys have the guns and the bombs and the weapons, and the few good people who may very well live there are living in fear because
they're getting stoned to death in front of 1,000 people.
They don't want to be the encore of a stoning act. So really horrible.
Want to get some calls in?
I think we will. I have another thing to talk about, but we can maybe intersperse calls with that kind of thing. Okay. But that was just something I had to go on a tear there because it's too horrible. And it's had a fellow who joined us at Threadgills a couple weeks ago and mentioned that there's the whole horrible thing of the female circumcision.
Oh yeah.
And he he revealed that what's interesting is that while the impression is that this is all just that it's this horrible forced activity that these, in which it is in a lot of situations, but in some cases, what he explained was, and this may or may not be true, but his explanation was that some women actually seek to have this done because if anything apparently can get you accused of rape, just if you like give a man directions to the bus station in some of these countries,
get accused of adultery,
okay, and you see the fate there, and so if a woman is lacking her clitoris and therefore cannot enjoy the sex act, then that becomes a defense against the rape charge. Why would I lead this man on? Why would I encourage him to do this to me? This is not an enjoyable act for me, so why would I even want to do it? And now that is really messed up.
Yeah,
when a culture is that far gone into this sort of theocratic extremism, that people seek to have their bodies mutilated just to keep themselves safe.
Yes.
From spurious charges and being summarily executed.
Well, and there's this cultural thing that a woman can't get married unless she's had this mutilation done because she'll be regarded as unclean, and any marriageable men would regard her as a whore. So she has to have her clitoris removed, or there are degrees of it, and some more horrific than others, but certainly it's all just on a spectrum of human rights violations here.
Yeah.
But they believe that you have to have this done or you won't find a husband, and that's
that's disgusting.